Welcome if you've just arrived, and glad you're still here if you've been attending some of my previous sessions. And we're talking about a subject that we weren't really talking about last year, but it's really on the agenda now, big data, whatever that might mean. And hopefully we'll know more by the time we've finished this hour's worth of presentations and discussion. And I think it's called big data, but I actually think it should be called little data, because it's all about making the best use of all the little nuggets of information you hold about your customers. And we'll hear about that in the next three presentations. So I've got three speakers here who will be presenting, and then we'll be asking questions after that. If you want copies of the presentations, I'm trying to negotiate that at the moment, so leave your business card on the way out, and if I can get the presentations available online, I'll drop you an email so you can download them. If you have already left your card, no need to do it again, because I'll be giving you a URL, a website address to a web page with all the presentations on from my sessions. Let me introduce my three speakers. So sitting closest to me is Stefan Ater. He's Vice President of Western Europe at Sabre Travel Network. And in the middle there is Andy Owen-Jones, his CEO of BD for Travel, BD as in big data, BD for Travel. So he's a travel big data expert. And last but not least is Patrick Bosworth, the furthest away from me. He's CEO of Duetto. I'll let our three speakers explain their companies a bit more. But first of all, let's welcome for the first presentation, Stefan.
Right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stefan Aita, and I'm going to talk to you about big data today. And I have some very good news for you. But first, I have three questions. The first one is, how many of you don't understand when I speak English? So that's the first good news. My English has improved. I'm still working on my Cambridge accent. That's going to be for next year. More seriously now. The second question is, how many of you understand what big data is and what it can do for your business? Please raise your hand. All right, so we will have a few questions after the session, I'm sure. And the third question is, of course, how many of you don't understand what big data is and what it can do for your business? And I understand that the rest of the crowd would raise their hand. So what we're going to talk about today is how can big data solve your big problems, your big issues, and improve your decision making. We're going to define what it is. We're going to understand what it can do for your business, and I'm going to provide a few examples from in and outside of the industry, and then we will answer to questions. So let's go to John Lennon first. Imagine a world where your company grows double-digit every year, where your customers are so happy that they never look into what the competition is doing, not only because they love you, but because you know them so well that you anticipate every single of their needs and you constantly outperform the competition. You're not threatened by disruptors and new technologies because you also anticipate them and you're the one who brings this technology to your customers. The macro industry issues have very minimal business impact, and you're super fast in making business decisions. Because of this performance, you're all super rich, you have plenty of time. That sounds good, huh? So what would you do to turn this into reality? What if I'm telling you that there is one brilliant piece of technology that can help you to achieve that? Because Brits and all of the nationalities around, including the Parisian that I am, are a skeptical bunch, you probably don't believe that. Not possible. Let me show you how we can do that. But first, let's talk about big data. And let's talk about the ambiguity. What I'm going to do, I'm going to strip away the hype and ambiguity around the term, around big data. I'm going to go into the substance of it and show you how we can help you to solve challenges. A few years back, we at Sabre have created a big data team. And believe me, the result that we have found and the initiative that we have started are going far beyond our expectation. And this is one of the more exciting things we are working on. So if Sabre can do it, if these companies as well can do it and can benefit from big data, why couldn't you? So let's see. I think that to start with, let's start with the definition. But I'm not talking about the Wikipedia definition. I'm talking about the real definition, the one that makes business sense, the one that matters for you. What is big data? It's a set of new tools that provide insight, and insight is very important. It's knowledge, it's knowing your customer, into data that make your business better, that improve your decision-making process. So big data is about insights, it's about actions to support your business decisions. And that's the real definition of big data. That only matters. If your business goal is to grow by 10%, your big data strategy should support that business goal. Is it worth it? If all stats are to go by, then yes. The companies who are using big data are twice more likely to be on top of 25% of our financial performance. They are 5 times more likely to make decisions faster. 89% rated it as very important or extremely important. So the ones who are into big data, who are doing it, say it's worth it. So what we need, and that's at the end of the session, the takeaways that I will give to you, we need to start. How are we going to start it? Let's see that. Travel opportunity. If you're still not convinced about big data, let's talk about some volumes. An average consumer has something like 1 terabyte of data per year. So that's what he creates, 1 terabyte of data per year. What does it mean, 1 terabyte of data per year? If you print 1 terabyte of information, this is more than 24 kilometers of A4 paper. This is 21 times beyond the height of the Yard Tower. So that's the information that you're using. What is the information? Where is this information coming from? Information is coming from all of your payment transactions. Information is coming from when you go to Facebook and check in. Information is coming from your Wi-Fi connection, your download of emails. Information is coming from your card, your travel bookings that you make online. That's where this information is coming from. And a traveler has 2 to 3 times more higher data footprint than a normal person. So let's talk about the challenges that we have into the travel world. The first big challenge that we see is changing of consumer behaviors. We see that our consumers, our customers do things that we were not expecting them to do, or at least they are changing. They are using a lot more mobile. For the travel agencies, their consumers are booking outside of travel policy. They do things that we don't expect them to do. How can we change that into an opportunity? Well, simply by personalizing our offer, by making sure that we integrate the new technologies in the offer that we provide to them, and making sure that they use the technologies that we provide them. Optimizing business operation. All of our customers want to reduce their cost. They all want to minimize the impact of the operations. How can big data have an influence on that? Well, it's by improving efficiency. I'm going to give you an example of a workflow of a travel agency that we manage. The workflow is so complicated that you can't even understand how this agency can work. By analyzing the big data behind, by analyzing the workflow behind, you are able to improve the efficiency of the agency and reduce their cost. Competition, well, by building loyalty, because you're giving your customer a personalized offer, you anticipate their needs, you include the new technology in your own offer, then you can preempt the needs and build loyalty of your customer base. Demonstrating value and new revenue stream. Most of our customers are interested in new services, but we don't know how to sell it then. By generating big data, and I'm going to show you how with a couple of examples, we can generate new service ideas. One of the examples that I want to give to you for these new service ideas is what Amazon is doing. So very simply, you know, Amazon, they have patented the idea of if you like this, you're going to like that. Now they have a new patent for a new innovation, which is the anticipation shopping. Anticipatory shopping, what is it? When you do a shopping, when you shop something on Amazon, what they want is to ship that book that you bought as fast, as quickly as they can. So what they're doing now, as soon as you shop, they already anticipate what's going to be your next purchase, and they already shop this next purchase. Can be a book, can be a CD related to the first one that you just booked, to the logistics center. But now they're doing something even more. What they're doing is, even before you buy, they ship it to your home address. So there is someone from Amazon knocking at your door, and there is a book, and he says, well, you have not ordered that, but we think you might be interested in that. Would you like to buy it? You will be surprised to see that 87% of the people buy it. Macro industry issues, act fast during an event. I'm going to talk about security. I was yesterday at another conference, and we were talking about Ebola. What do you do in case of an Ebola crisis? How do you manage the people who travel in different places of the world when they are located in different places? How do you know who is where, and how do you know how to take them back? This is a big data analysis that can help you to do that, and that can help you to react. Another example from outside of the industry, a company like Nike or a company like Adidas, what they do is they, with the wearable and the new T-shirt that they give to their football players, they analyze in real time if the footballer is tired or can play a little bit longer. So the coach can make a decision, instant decision, based on the information that he gets from the sensors that are on the T-shirt. But they even go further. There are some cameras that are linked to satellites that analyze their competitors' fatigue and tiredness. And if they see that the competition, one side of the competition is tired, then they will reinforce the attack on that side. So that's how big data has something to do and something to do with decision making and acting fast during a process. Personalization. What is really interesting is when travel interacts and intersects with mobile consumer behaviors. That's the equivalent of a Pebble watch or Apple Watch, something like that. So what our labs are doing, they are exploring the ability for agencies to send 2 questions just after the flight. With that, agency can improve the traveler satisfaction and can act immediately if the traveler is not satisfied or if there was an issue. But we can even go further that road. Imagine if your flight is delayed and you received an information on your watch saying your flight has been delayed by 2 hours, you're entitled to an indemnification, a compensation. Would you like the compensation to be put on your next flight, or would you like a cash back immediately on your account? And you press that. So that's the kind of services that we are thinking of, that we are creating in our labs, and then we are working with the airlines and with the travel agencies in order to deploy that and to bring that to you. This is a result of an enormous volume of data that we analyze, and the velocity of making a fast decision and sending the information to the customer. I was talking about a very complicated chart. So what is on the screen is a very complex chart that represents the processes for a travel agency when you, anybody in this room, make a travel reservation. From the time when we order we ask the agency to find a flight from London to Madrid, till the time where this agency is being able to invoice us for that flight. Very complex workflow. If we don't use big data and visualization tools that we have and that we have developed, we won't be able to make it easier, make it simpler, make it quicker. And by making it quicker, then we decrease the cost of the travel agency, and we make it simpler for the customer to be able to book his flight and to have the return immediately. So the improved efficiency by visualizing the workflow is a great add for the big data. Another example that we are working on, and that's a test that we are conducting with 2 airports in the US, where imagine you're stuck on the highway an hour from the airport, and we know, because we analyze the traffic, that you will not make it. The flight, the check-in will close before you're able to make your flight on time. Wouldn't it be good if your travel agent or the airline calls you and tells you, well, sir, we know where we are, you're not able to make your flight, we are going to book you for free because you're a platinum passenger, or for an extra charge of £50 on the next available flight. And your depart is now in 2 hours. And by the way, we are going to send notification to your taxi company and to your hotel that you're going to have a late check-in. That's the kind of service that we are currently working on. Same indoor, when you are in the terminal. Wouldn't it be good if you're 5 minutes away from your check-in desk, and your check-in desk is about to close, you receive a notification from from the airline saying, well, go straight to this check-in desk, we know you're in the airport, we are going to keep it open for you, and there will be someone waiting for you to help you to clear security, because the flight is because you're late and the flight is about to depart. So that's the kind of services that the big data analyze and the quick decision making can help you to make. New product and service ideas I was talking about. So that's the indoor localization. I was talking about what is in it for the passenger, but that is what is in it for the airline. So the airline or the hotel will be able to localize who is where, how far are they, do we need to open the check-in a little bit longer, or is everybody already around, and can we make a quick boarding in order to accelerate the process? So that the kind of new services that will facilitate as well the fluidity of the traffic for the airlines. I was talking about artifact during an event. Traveler security is another one example that is very important. We have developed that 3 or 4 years ago, and that was the first example of a usage of big data. In an event of an emergency, this tool can instantly pinpoint travelers' location and contact information. So we know exactly who is where, and we know exactly how we can take them back in a safe place. This tool also alerts you when some critical personnel of your company flies on the same flight, are on the same flight, because you don't want all of your executives to fly on the same flights. And Sabre is the only GDS to provide these kind of capabilities for airlines and travelers and travel agencies. Well, that's what I wanted to say about big data. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stéphane, for that. A good introduction to big data with the GDS. And ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Andy from BD for Travel.
Hi. BD for Travel is a company that specializes in personalizations, which is one of the 5 areas that Stefan picked out. Why did we start there? If you remember your strategy from the days of Michael Porter, when Michael Porter was very fashionable, all value chains are built on understanding the customer and building value on top of those. And too often in the travel industry, we start at the other end. We start with the offer and try and work backwards towards the customer. So what we've done is we've taken the detailed customer interaction that customers have with shops, and we've gone down to those very granular elements that Paul was talking about. We've turned that into visualizations and actions and things that you can do, because the customer is the person who pays the money. But too often, particularly for online travel shops, we do average customers. So we look for the 1% who manage to find their way through the system, and we're happy with that. And maybe we A/B test a little, and we get our average up to 1.2%, and we're very happy. But that still means 98.8% of people are not shopping in your shop when they could be. And that's not typical of the average shopping experience. But before I come on to that, I think a lot of things in data and visualization have, as Stefan has said, moved on very quickly from where we thought they'd be. So if any of you are fans of old science fiction films, a lot of the progress that you'll see in things that have happened have been in data and visualization. This was a film that was made in 1982. Anyone recognize it? Very good, Blade Runner. There should be more geeks here. Blade Runner, great movie, made in 1982. We don't have replicants in 2019, or we won't have replicants in 2019 that look exactly like humans. But my goodness, our user interfaces are better than they thought they would be. Similarly, this film, Tom Cruise, anyone? Minority Report, very good. And his display that he had there, he predicted for 2054. And this was a film made in 2002. The displays that you get on Microsoft Surface have really moved to this space and beyond. Data has really evolved a lot, even if we don't have teleporting, if we don't have some of these other things. Actually, when you come onto the precogs, which were in those films, these were three very strange white creatures who lay in a pool of something, and they generated ideas about what was going to happen in terms of crime. And actually, big data allows you to do this kind of thing. This poor guy here was a guy called Scotty Patterson, and he was one of the first people who was predicted to rob a bank, and the police lay in wait for him. So they noticed that in Madison County at certain times of day, there were going to be a number of data patterns that would happen, and one of them was people were robbing banks. So they identified 3 potential target banks and 3 potential timescales, and they put a little police squad sitting there. In he walks, tries to hold it up, and they arrest him. So it's not precognition, but it's starting to use data to do things that are common sense, but if you break it down into the really granular things, you can start to see patterns. Because although we as individuals are not necessarily completely predictable, people as a group are predictable. And actually, when you get down to the individual, people are far more predictable than you would think. So we've built our business trying to understand what happens when you try and pin people down to predict what they're going to do on a website and don't just treat them as an average. Because almost every website I know treats people as an average, until it comes to retargeting, until it comes to trying to sell you other things. It's a great example, Amazon. This is actually an example I took off Amazon the other day. And this is people who bought this also bought that, which is a little unfortunate. Because down here, when people who also bought this American baseball bat also bought masks and knuckle dusters. That's not really the kind of recommendation, the engine that you really want to push out to your customer. And so some of these things, if you just completely automate them, can become a little counterproductive for your business. What we do is we dive into the very detail of what's going on. I'm sure many of you are thinking, big data, what on earth does this look like? So I thought I'd show you. But first of all, my thought is, anyone who comes into this chap's shop is a customer. Do they spend money? Not necessarily. They're still a customer. Do they inquire? Yes. And this person would think of them as a customer. But typically, as travel shops, we think of people, particularly online travel shops, we think of people as customers once they've booked or once they've made a concrete inquiry. But that's not all the data, because people are speaking to you constantly. And this is what data looks like. That's a live feed from one of ours. It's not a live feed, it's a feed of what the data looks like. And you have to turn that into things that produce meaning. Because if you just get stacks and stacks and stacks of data like that, it's pretty meaningless. And what the message about big data is, it's not just collecting data. It's turning that data into visualizations, into insights, and then into actions. And if you just collect the data, it's quite interesting, but maybe you're collecting the wrong type of data. So, for example, we looked at the type of data collection that Amazon and others do. But the travel industry is much more complicated. Amazon have got, maybe 4 million books? But those books don't disappear and come in and out on a daily basis. They don't have 5 booking classes or 10 booking classes in each book. They don't have double occupancy for a book. And by the time you start to multiply 1,500 airports, 600 airlines, 26 booking classes, 740,000 hotels, plus, your number of combinations is unbelievable. And normal tagging and normal e-commerce techniques don't work particularly well for travel. So you have to put in the extra layers and the extra work and the extra insight. Just because someone clicks 5 times on a hotel doesn't mean they like that hotel. It may be because the response is not coming back with the right thing. It may be because the price is wrong. It may be, if they're waiting on the site for 15 seconds, because you've got a really slow system behind it, not because they're really engaged in the picture of the hotel. And how can you use the normal metrics where someone's sitting staring at a screen waiting when you don't actually know what's going on behind the scenes? So you have to pull all those insights together to tell you something about it. What we tend to do is try and identify the DNA of every single person who comes into a digital travel shop, whether that's a website or a mobile or an app, or even into a shop where there's someone responding to what they're doing. It could be on the Wi-Fi of a shop, for example. And out of that, we can tell, because of what they're looking at, what their interest is, what their intent is, and by what their intent is, I mean, are they coming here to browse? Are they looking for inspiration? Or are they here ready to book? Because if someone came into your shop and it was a physical shop, and they said, look, I don't know what to do next summer, you'd say, well, what interests you? What kind of thing would you like? And you'd try and inspire them. You wouldn't say, well, I've got an offer for 429 euros, and it's going to go on this date, and it's going to go there. Because you've got to identify what the person wants and respond with the appropriate kind of recommendation. But every time they ask you something, they're leaving some kind of question or some kind of query, some kind of breadcrumb or footprint for you to pick up and do something with. But typically, we don't do much with that stuff other than for purposes of retargeting. And I'm sure some of you have booked a hotel recently, and then that hotel has followed you around on Facebook, and it's followed you wherever you've gone, and you can't get rid of this hotel or this pair of sneakers, and it's really annoying. That's not useful. Sometimes it's helpful for people because you thought, oh yes, I forgot to book that hotel, I'll go back and book that hotel. But in travel, that doesn't work so well. It works well if you're looking for sneakers and then you think, oh yes, I forgot to buy them, I'll click on those. But often that offer has moved on, your thought process has changed and so on. There's a context to it. Also, there's a churn risk. If someone comes on your site and they click on a hotel and it's 499 euros for a week somewhere, and when they get down to the availability check, it actually comes out at 560 euros. What's the chance they're going to move on and do something else? Well, we can tell you because we've modeled those things. And we've seen over thousands, millions of results, what happens when people take a path through your website. And if you get good at it, you can start to predict what those people will do and start to react. And I think every technology company or every good startup has to have a magic moment. And that's when someone suddenly realizes the power of something. The power of Facebook, for example, their magic moment is when their customer gets 10 friends. And they can start to see their friends' activities appearing in their news feed. And it starts to become something compelling. Our magic moment, if you like, is when we reveal to our customers what their customers look like. So this little diagram that you can see here, along the bottom you've got days to departure over to the right-hand side. It goes out to best part of a year ahead. And on the left-hand side, it's people who are going to depart imminently. On the upward axis, you've got the price of the people who are looking on your site. And we've got very good at predicting exactly what price people are going to pay. So we can spot the price-sensitive people and the people who aren't price-sensitive. And of course, the price-sensitive people tend to look at one type of hotel. The non-price-sensitive people look at another type of hotel. And you can start to do interesting things with these patterns. And you can dive down from there and pick an individual who's never registered with you, never looked at you, but you know this person is interested in 1 or 2 or 3 trips because they're telling you. It's like they're walking into your shop and checking 50 brochures on the same page and telling you, here's the brochure I'm looking at, here's the brochure I'm looking at. And we actually only look at the average of what people end up booking. So we capture absolutely everything they look at and then analyze those patterns and pull out of that data to say, okay, if this person's looking at this hotel multiple times, what does it tell us? And you can run the algorithms to learn such that they can start to predict who's likely to leave your site and who's likely to book. And then you can start to trigger actions. And of course, we're not 100% accurate, but we're 60 times as accurate as guessing. And actually, when you're playing the average game, you're no more accurate than guessing, really. You push things through different ways, and you get a little bit more accurate than guessing, and you work maybe the button differently, and you work some of the workflows. But if you can predict who's going to book and you can follow them through, you can start to change the interaction that you have with a website. You can dive down. You can't see this from the back, but this is every item that this person has clicked on. So we record, for example, if someone's looked at 7 hotels, maybe they clicked on something and said, I want a swimming pool. Swimming pool is very important for me. And if you've ever worked in Germany, a clean swimming pool is very important for me. That would be something that German customers would think would be really important. But actually, if you don't have click boxes on your site and someone looks at 7 hotels and they discard the 3 that don't have a swimming pool, you can infer from that that a swimming pool is important. If they look at hotels that are really good for sports and they've never clicked a box, you can pull in their DNA and say, actually, we infer from that sports is important to this person. And as you start to build the profile, you can start to say, actually, people who search for this kind of thing like this. So instead of having your data of 1%, and I know there's a rumor in travel that it's impossible to do Amazon-like recommendations because people only shop for a holiday once or twice or 3 times a year, whereas you go on Amazon a lot. But actually people search and search and search and search and search. And I found cases just randomly looking where people have spent 1,059 minutes on one website over a period of 6 weeks looking for their holiday. And in that time, they had about 900 or 950 interactions with the site. And every time they told you what they were doing. And you can piece together those stories and see what individuals are doing. Out of that, you can map DNA. So we can work out what that individual wants on this trip. And maybe that's different from what they want on another trip. Once maybe they're going with their wife, once maybe they're going with their family. It'll be subtly different. But then you've got 2 sets of DNA that you can put together. And you build a richer and richer and richer picture. Some of the things are hard criteria, like I want a double room. Some of them are soft criteria, like I want a view or location's important to me. And they don't tell you that, but their behavior tells you that, like it would if they came into your shop. And if you get these things right, you can change people's interest away from price into things like comfort, into things like relevance, into things like people like you, into things like, if you really want this, we would recommend it. And then you can create actions. So if you're in a call center and you see there's a lot of people on your site, who do you interact with? You can pick out the people who are most likely to be bookers because you know their criteria and who are most likely to bring you high revenue. And you can open a live chat with them to help them across the line. Why do we wait for shopping cart abandonment when actually we can spot the people who are going to abandon their shopping carts before they've done it and just help them find the right thing? If you're in a call center too, imagine how it would be if when you call someone, you don't just have some data about them, but we can also tell that call center agent what hotel is this person most likely to buy, because we know what would suit them best, because there are only a limited number of hotels in the world. Sure, there are about 750,000, but of those, the main holiday destinations is about 140,000. And if you've got all of those mapped with the characteristics of those hotels and the DNA of those hotels, when people come, you know what's important to people, and you can start to propose the hotels that people are most likely to buy. And the wonderful thing with big data, although it's a pain sometimes and it's just data, 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 the more data you have and the better your algorithms are, the more you learn. And the more you learn, and the more you learn, it gets refined and better, and your percentages increase over time. And so you can match the best offers and services to each individual, which allows you to personalize things, it allows you to target things, and finally it allows you to monitor things. Because how many of you actually know what's the experience of every single customer on your website? You might know you've got a 99.9% uptime, but do you know how many of your customers are seeing offers with broken images? Do you know how many of them have clicked on something, and then when they go to checkout, actually the price is completely different? And at what price point will they jump from you? And nowadays, you can tell that. You can dive into that, and you can turn that into something that you can tune your algorithms with. So why would you recommend a hotel where it's always served up with a broken image in a list? Why would you recommend a hotel which every time people click on it, there's a price jump? You tune those down in your algorithms. Yes, of course, you want to use price as a bargaining chip in your negotiation with the customer, but basically, you can start to learn what is the optimum thing to get people across the line to buy and be satisfied. The nice thing is, the technology can cope these days. Storage is not that expensive. There's good technology out there. It works, basically. But doing it on its own doesn't bring you much. You need the insight, you need the learning, you need people to accompany you to do that. Of course, that's what we do, coincidentally. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. That's very good. And here comes Patrick, ladies and gentlemen, so let's welcome him.
Thank you, Paul. So I'm going to focus my presentation on the hotel industry. I'm also going to talk about some macro trends primarily to start with, and how other companies are entering our industry and extracting value for their own benefit, and some of the things that hotels can do to protect their own position in the market. So this is just a quick overview showing some of the waves of innovation that have reshaped the hotel industry over decades. And what you'll see is, my assertion is that in prior decades, it's primarily been driven by evolution in the service model of hotels, in branding, and then also in financial structures of dividing ownership from asset managers, from management companies and brands. But that for the last 15 years, we've really been living in an era where the majority of the disruption is coming from online technologies, online distribution. But most hotel companies, if you look at the senior leadership, the CEOs, COOs, and so forth, they come out of disciplines that are primarily on the real estate side or the operations side. And I think that it explains why some of the key leaders in our industry, the largest companies, have not been able to keep pace with the incredibly rapid changing environment of hotel distribution. And so if you look at the relationship between the power of the different intermediaries that we work with in our markets over time, there are traditional players that we're very comfortable with, like the GDS and increasingly online travel agencies that now have reached a certain level of maturity. But there's new entrants of tech giants like Google, Facebook, and then obviously iOS and Android that have tremendous more power in the market than we've ever seen before. And I think it can cause us to get a little discouraged at times, or I think it should, if we understand the power that these organizations are going to have to get between us and our customers. But what's happening today is, if you look at the budgets of hotel companies in particular, and where they're spending their resources on information technology, marketing spend, and other places, it's ignoring the players that are within 3 to 5 years going to be extracting far more power over how our guests find us online, how they book, and how they interact with our brands. And so I think this creates a strategic gap that hotel companies need to start to address. And if you are investing the least, for instance, in mobile, and I don't mean building a mobile app, but certainly focusing on mobile marketing, insights coming from mobile, optimizing your web platforms and other things, and being able to have a call center, for instance, that converts a mobile visit into a closed piece of business over the phone. If those aren't focuses of your business, then the companies that are doing that effectively are going to outperform, I believe, and the companies that are not investing in these areas are going to be the ones that are going to be suffering the most at the hands of these new intermediaries. And so if you just look at the market caps of the companies involved, I think it's good to be reminded that the largest hotel companies in the world are between $5 billion and $20 billion in valuation. We had the new entrants like Priceline, who as of a few weeks ago had, I think, a $63 billion US dollar valuation. But the new entrants in our market dwarf those. And at many conferences you hear, me included, whining about how much money we're spending in these marketing channels, how high the margins have gotten to extract this business. And in some cases we look to Facebook and Google and others as a lower cost channel of distribution, but I think that that's actually going to be fairly naive to believe that these new ways of engaging the discovery and booking process are going to continue to be as cheap as they are today in some of these cases, with Google Hotel Finder starting to take shape and so forth. And so I think it's incumbent upon hotel organizations to stop thinking of themselves purely as services organizations, which they obviously need to remain to being, but really being data-driven organizations. And when I think about big data, I think often attitudinally is as much about technology and the data itself. It's the openness to looking at a data source, structuring it in some useful way, running an experiment from it, which I think was a theme of both of the first presentations, and being able to use it to drive changes in business decisions. And so the ramifications of the changes that are happening, I think, can be seen in some of the patterns around acquisition costs. If you compare hotels to the acquisition costs for airlines and rental cars, it's much, much higher. So airlines 3 to 6%, rental car companies 4 to 6%, and hotels are paying anywhere from 15 to 25% to acquire new customers. A study that came from the Hotel Asset Managers Association last year showed that the costs that are being paid by hotels to acquire new customers, the commissions that are being paid to intermediaries are growing at roughly double the rate of revenue growth. So since 2009, revenues, and this is a global data set. It's weighted in North America, but has a lot of European hotels participating from the ownership groups that contributed data to the study. And during that period, revenues grew by about 20% and commissions grew by 37%. And this is during an economic recovery when you would have expected that the commission percentages actually would have fallen relative to revenues because you were relying upon less, in theory, less leisure discounted business and more corporate direct, more group business and so forth. And yet that's not what we've seen. And I don't know that the dynamics of the market have changed such that you won't need more commissionable business in the next recession. I just think that this is a chilling statistic showing that even during a period of economic growth, we've continued to see these expenses skyrocket. And it's not just from online travel agencies, it's from Cvent, it's from Passkey, it's from a lot of intermediation that's happening throughout many of the different customer segments. And I would argue that over the next 5 to 10 years, the real growth that we're going to see is largely going to be on the business traveler side, which to this point has remained a very high margin business for hotels, lower cost of distribution, even with the fixed price contracts that are often negotiated. But now I think you're going to have players like major OTAs and tech giants trying to get you in between you and your customers. And the last bit of data that came out of the Cornell Hospitality Research Summit a few weeks ago is that they're now finding that there's no longer a correlation between RevPAR and gross operating profit. And the data that they looked at suggested that the RevPAR leader in a particular market is not usually the gross operating profit leader. That whoever's leading in RevPAR and RevPAR index, if you're in a market that has STR data or one of their competitors here in Europe, they're very rarely the top performer because they're buying the business. Their costs of acquisition are likely much higher than some of the sort of middle tier players within a comp set. And I think it speaks to the fact that historically, I think looking back 10 to 15 years ago, that would not have been the case. And yet so many hoteliers, so many management agreements and performance agreements of GMs and things are weighted around driving RevPAR and ignoring net revenue. And so I'll start to relate this back to big data somewhat. So, if you are a hotelier who's trying to grapple with this new environment and figuring out how to appeal to customers, I think you need to get out of the mindset of building custom software in-house. Software companies that are out there right now may not have all of the functionality that a custom in-house system provides, but the advantage in the future is going to be the interconnectivity. So the software vendors on the market now are designing software that is meant to be interoperable with different CRMs, different marketing retargeting platforms, revenue management systems, PMSs, CRSs, and so forth. And the opportunity cost of not being able to play in that web of new technologies that are coming up that allow you to connect with customers in the booking process in a way that was never possible before is a huge disadvantage for any hotel company that is being held back by homegrown in-house software. Another is being able to capture actionable, critical data. It doesn't always have to be a large data set. Again, I consider big data to be more of a mindset than anything. You can throw interesting data into Excel spreadsheets and come up with some hypotheses for how you think customers will respond, and test those assumptions and be able to iterate in your business in a low-tech way as part of an evolution towards being more sophisticated. I already talked about experimentation and measuring, but that the key is to connect with customers again in that discovery and booking process. And I think too often hotel companies today, for instance, have designed loyalty programs that are designed only to appeal to road warrior business travelers, where you need to stay 25 nights, 50 nights, 100 nights in order to provide them anything of benefit, whether it's an early check-in, late check-out, a free night, free internet, free breakfast, whatever the inducement happens to be. But for the 95% of travelers who admittedly only make up 20 to 40% of the revenue in our industry, they're not getting anything of value by booking direct with a hotel group. And those customers are the ones who I think have tremendous anxiety. They're shopping, according to Google, 8 to 22 different websites during the booking process, and somewhere along the line, they're coming to your website. And certainly some of the techniques in the last presentation I think are absolutely critical to figure out Why is it that someone that went to your website and didn't choose to book through you, but booked through another channel, one that's much higher margin for you, where you should be using it as an acquisition channel, and yet you keep reacquiring that customer over and over again and not being able to convert them to your own direct channels? And I think hotel loyalty programs are a big culprit for that. So if you had a booking engine tied to a CRM that allows you to recognize a customer that has just given you their email address or maybe stayed with you once years ago, you should be able to break parity with online travel agencies, for instance, or even meta-search players, and offer them a better price or a better offer. It could be a service offering, because there's no excuse for them not to get the best deal booking with you. And as long as you're recognizing them, then it's not in violation of your agreements with any of these third parties. And so another is obviously data sets. Too often in the siloed environment of a hotel organization where revenue management is really sort of cordoned off from marketing, there isn't good integration between those teams. And so what we are looking at is moving towards a revenue strategy environment where the revenue management teams are integrated into marketing, and they're looking at data sets that are designed to observe customers in their buying process and to look at the data sets they use when making decisions. So rather than just looking at reservation data and what your competitors are charging, you try to observe the customer in their buying process on your own website, to get data from online travel agency websites and knowing what future dates people are searching for, what prices they're being quoted, looking at airline ticket sales, knowing that Heathrow Airport has sold 17% more arrivals for a day coming up 3 months from now is very, very interesting for being able to determine what the compression is going to be in your particular hotel market and how that should impact your distribution and pricing policies and tactics for that particular day. Also looking at social media data, weather forecasts, and so on. And so it's really taking a much more customer-centric approach to distribution and pricing than what most hotels are doing today. And if you view things like revenue management or digital marketing and others as sort of numbers games of just trying to figure out how many guests are in market and at what price point you could fill, I think it misses the opportunity to recognize those microsegments and to be able to tailor offers and pricing to those customers, which is ultimately how these intermediaries are winning. And so you need to be able to independently price different customer segments to be able to appeal to them and be able to convert that business. Part of that is then uniting the entire hotel organization so that every executive is making decisions from the same data. Your operations team, finance, marketing, sales, revenue management, distribution should all be having one sort of core predictive analytics solution to help drive decisions at the property. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is in this big data world where no matter how big the data sets are that we have, they're being dwarfed by the data sets of companies like Google and Facebook and others, Twitter, Amazon. But these intermediaries, they need one thing. They don't create a lot of content themselves that helps users find what they need. So in some cases, there's some social data that can provide that. But I think hoteliers existing on a street corner in a highly localized market have a tremendous opportunity to serve up content to these search engines and other gatekeepers that get between you and customers to provide up that content to them. And hotels, I think, that have been very successful at controlling these costs of distribution and producing offers that resonate with consumers are tying into their local markets. They're aware of the festivals that are happening. They're aware of what really drives a consumer to want to book a hotel in your particular city. And you're creating rich video content, written content, other visual content that companies like Google and others value tremendously, and it makes it so that on a much more cost-effective basis you can actually survive in this growingly complex environment. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for that good look at hotels there. Who'd like to ask our speakers a question? Just pop your hand up. Something occurred to me listening to your presentations, and I wrote down, is big data only for big companies or not? Or can smaller companies actually benefit from some of the disciplines of big data? Who'd like to respond to that?